Hi, my name is Meredith. I'm a writer, and today I want to talk about character templates or profiles, basically the place where you keep all the information that you need to know about your character. So, I've read a lot of writing craft books in the past year and a half, and I've compiled a list of all of the information that I think should be on a character template or profile. This is the information that's going to take you from a story that's kind of interesting or has an intriguing premise but isn't quite landing to a story that's going to grab people. So let's get into this character profile and look at the elements that are actually going to build a really effective, interesting, complex character. Okay, so the primary resources that I use to compile this are Save the Cat, the Story Equation, Story Genius, a little bit of Story Grid, but not as much. You should go read those resources for yourself. I always suggest going to the source material, but for now, here is my character profile. Okay, the very first thing that you want to do is to figure out your backstory moment. So, this is essentially a traumatic moment in the character's backstory that made them who they are today. Then there's the secondary moment, which is a smaller moment that represents what they lost. So, say if a family member died or if they lost their house in a fire, something like that, that could be a traumatic moment, but maybe the moment that stands out to them is when they pick up their charred doll from the ruins of the house, or when they hold like the wedding ring of the person who died in their hand. And so it's a very, very small moment afterwards that's symbolic of what they lost or what they went through. So digging into this is essentially the basis of character creation. It's going to let you figure out exactly why your character is motivated to do what they do in the book, because this moment is so important to who they are. Keep digging down, asking why, why did this happen? Why did they care about it? Why did it impact them? Like if they lost somebody, what did that person mean to them? Think of a happy memory with that person that they lost and can never regain, stuff like that. The next thing will be a wound slash shard of glass. They mean the same thing, but those are the different terms used in different writing craft books. So this is essentially the hurt that they acquired during the backstory moment that kind of was cemented during the smaller, more symbolic moment. And the wound is going to be the thing that needs to be healed by the end of the story. It's kind of pushing them to act out with their flaw, and it's taught them the lie that they believe. And so those are elements that we're going to get to, but they really come back to this wound that they were wounded. It comes from a hurt that needs to be healed in order for them to grow up and develop past the flawed person that they are. The next thing that we want to talk about, element number 3, is going to be a fear. And it is not just any fear. This is the fear. So characters can have a lot of fears. I think that that develops a character and is very, very interesting in a character if they have fears. But the fear is the thing that happened to them during the backstory moment, or an aspect that happened to them during the backstory moment that they are now terrified of. The important thing with the fear is that they will take steps to avoid the fear, and yet, as the story starts, the fear is going to be along the path towards their goal, and they're going to have to choose to confront it. And so this creates internal conflict. Is they're afraid of something, and yet they may have to confront it in order to get what they want. And so this is a way of creating a character that has to make decisions that are tough. Specifically, the fear is important at the all is lost moment. So as they go through the book, they are trying to achieve their goal, they get themselves into trouble, and eventually they come to a point where they have done so many wrong things, they've made so many bad choices, they have lost it all, and they feel like their goal is unachievable. And in this moment, the fear comes true. Like it becomes a reality for them. They are faced with their greatest fear. And so this is a way of getting a character to reach rock bottom. So setting up this fear in the backstory moment and having this be a thing that's mentioned throughout the book so you know they're afraid of it. This is a really effective way of creating that rock bottom moment so that there's even higher that they can climb once they kind of reach their triumph moment that comes next. The next element is the lie or misbelief. It is called either or in a bunch of different writing craft resources, but it's the same thing. So this is the thing they were taught in the moment where they had their backstory traumatic moment. And it's what they believe is true going forward. And it creates the flaw, it creates their wrong behavior that's going to get them into trouble. So this could be a lot of different things, but it has to stem from this backstory moment. It has to absolutely logically follow that someone who went through something that specific in that traumatic way will carry with them this false belief that they need to unlearn. It could be something like, I am not worthy of love. Wealth is the only thing that will make me happy. People will always betray you, so don't get close to anybody, like you have to work alone. So, whatever that backstory moment follows, that they would believe a lie from it, that's their lie, that's what they believe. Operating on this lie digs them into a hole, basically. And throughout the book, we watch this lie destroy their lives and overturn their goals. When they come to dilemmas and decision points, they operate on the lie rather than the truth, because that's the bedrock of what they believe. And this gets them to the all is lost moment. This gets them to rock bottom by operating on this lie. The important thing to remember here is that they can't achieve their goal while believing in the lie or the misbelief. They have to change their mindset in order to actually achieve their goal. The next thing to talk about is the flaw. So, the flaw is the behavior that stems from the lie, and it is a thing that they will act on routinely. It's a part of who they are. If you asked, what would a person do in this situation between these two options, you should know what they would pick based on the lie they believe and the flaw that results from it. And this will give you a blueprint for how they handled their decisions and how they move through the story. And we're not setting up a villain with this. Like, this is just a human being. This is any of us, right? This is a person trying to be a protagonist, trying to be a hero, but they're doing it in a flawed way because they can't help it. And so keep that in mind. Like, we're not setting up a villain. And in the spirit of transitioning more towards kind of the understanding side of the character template, what do they want? So their want is going to be the emotional thing that they want fulfilled. This is the thing that they believe will make them happy. It's what they believe will heal their wound. If somebody lost their family in the backstory moment, their want might be to find a sense of family and a sense of home again. The want is usually a pretty understandable, pretty innocent thing that somebody could imagine would make them feel better after carrying around this hurt this whole time. And so this is not a bad thing. This is a really understandable, kind of admirable thing that they're headed toward. And the way that they're headed towards it is by the tangible goal. So the goal is the tangible thing that they want, that they think will help them achieve the emotional want. And the goal is the driving factor of the book. So whatever the want is, if the want is money or fame or love or appreciation, they're going to have a tangible goal, a way that they have planned to get there. Maybe they have a business plan to get wealth. Maybe they're auditioning to become a movie star. So they have to achieve the want in some way. And that's going to be the tangible goal. That's going to be the goal of the entire book. And that's going to drive the plot forward. And then you have to keep in mind, it's worth writing down the motive just to connect the want to the goal. So whatever the goal is, you make sure that you write down the reason why that matters to them to get the goal, because it will fulfill the want and it will heal that wound that they have, or they think it will. Just keep the motive in your mind, because motive is such an important factor in driving the character's decisions. If you can't answer what's the motive for every decision, every action that they make, then you need to backtrack and figure that out from the elements I've already talked about. So keep motive sharp and clear. The last huge thing to remember on your character template, this is basically the biggest thing because this is your book's theme, is the need or lesson. It's the same thing, but it's called lesson or need depending on which write and craft book you pick up. This is the counter to their misbelief or their lie. This is the truth. This is the truth that sets them free, that allows them to achieve their goal, that allows them to triumph or beat the villain, or actually just get what they want at the end. So they should be able to achieve their goal. But in order to do that, they have to unlearn their misbelief. And this is the thing that takes its place. So the need and lesson is incredibly important, and it has to stem from the backstory moment and that very first lie that they picked up when they were hurt in that traumatic way. And this happens at the aha moment. So after they've lost everything in the all is lost moment, because they've relied on their lie and their flaw, they have to learn the right way of doing things. And this will turn the whole story on its head when they finally realize, like, there's such a triumphant moment. If you ever watch a movie or read a book and you're looking out for the aha moment, when they actually figure out how to do things the right way, like, it is a beautiful moment. And only once they learn this lesson can they actually go on and achieve their goal, because now finally they're going at it in the right way. Some examples from Save the Cat, they have a really nice list, I think on page 16, of some lessons that can be learned. And so I'm just going to list them off just to give you ideas. We've got forgiveness, love, acceptance, faith, fear, trust, survival, selflessness, responsibility, redemption. Some of those are negative, like fear or possibly survival, right? People can have a negative character arc and to maybe learn a harsh truth about the world, and maybe they were living in a naive way. So character arcs can go down, but mostly they're going to go up. Mostly the lesson learned in the theme of your book is going to be positive, unless you have a very bleak book. Okay, last couple things to think about. We also need to just list out some of the values that they have. This is a way to dig deep into who your character is, how they were raised, what their culture is, who their parents were, stuff like that. But basically the idea is, what is your character fighting for? What is the value system that they're staking everything on and that they're going after their goal for. A couple examples that I thought up just to give you some ideas are things like family, honor, truth, justice, peace, morality, integrity. I also include just a list of positive traits because all of these have been very much like what is the trait that signifies this very important moment. But I also like to just round the character out by looking at what are some positive traits? What are some other things that they do really well? Or things that influence their decisions that are not necessarily a flawed way of looking at things, but let's shine a little light on the positive side of who this person is and what will fuel their actions and decision making. This could be things like optimism, kindness, compassion, industriousness, drive, anything that's a positive trait, but that's not the defining trait that we have looked at earlier in the character profile. And then the last thing that I included here is other flaws. So people are multifaceted, which means that they have more than just a flaw or one flaw. So I would list out the other flaws that I can think of that kind of influence who the character is and what decisions they make, just like the positive traits, exactly the other side of that, but it's different from the main flaw. So anything else that you want to throw in there that's going to add complexity or richness to your character, throw that on there. Okay, that's my character profile. With that profile, I created characters that for the very first time I completely connected with and just understood everything about their motivations and every decision that they made. I knew exactly why they were making it. So I really, really do suggest this over anything that is more surface level. Okay, so now that we're done talking about the character profile, I am going to go into the example of Brekker. So if you don't want any spoilers about Six of Crows, if you have yet to read those books, seriously, I would just say go read the books. But if you want to see an example of this and how this all comes together to create a complex character who is insanely likable, people love Brekker. If you want to see that, then stick around and let's get into Brekker's character profile. Okay, starting off with the big spoiler, but not of the book, just of his backstory. And it all comes back to this, so I have to say it. I can't just skip over this part. This starts it all. It's revealed in the first book that he and his brother came to Ketterdam with a little bit of money and they made a bad investment. And this man named Pekka Rollins essentially stole all of their money and left them penniless. And then when the disease called firepox swept through the city, they were penniless and on the streets. His brother, Geordie, died of this. And so that is the backstory moment. The fact that a man robbed them, he lost both his family and his fortune through that. That's the backstory moment. But the moment that's actually the symbolic moment that came slightly after that cemented what he had lost and cemented his fears is slightly after. And so we see this actually working out perfectly. The moment that comes after is when he actually is alive and all the plague bodies have been dumped out to sea. And in order for him to get back to land, he uses his brother's corpse in order to float back to shore. That's just a really, really traumatic moment for him that he never gets over. So the wound here is cemented not in losing his fortune, not even in losing his brother, but really in the moment where it becomes so real that he has to use his brother's dead body to get back to shore. And the wound is losing his family through somebody else just conning him, just not even caring, not even knowing who he is, and just completely destroying his life for the sake of their gain. So that's his wound. I just want to say, before we get a little bit more into this, that this is my interpretation of his character profile. Either way, it's going to illustrate how he becomes a full complex character, but there is obviously a little bit of room for debate here. He has two physical fears. Number one, basically touching skin because of the experience of using his brother's corpse to get back to shore, and then also water or drowning. So he's terrified of these two physical things, and this creates such interesting moments in the rest of the book where he has to decide to contend with these things in order to go for his goal. I would say another fear of his is opening up to people. I think since he lost his family, he's become so closed off from anybody else, from any other goal besides revenge, which we'll get to, that he doesn't want to let anyone in. And that's really, really clear with Inej. Like, he will not be emotionally vulnerable with her. So I think emotional vulnerability is a fear of his because he lost everything. I think his lie or misbelief is that if he can get revenge, he will be happy or be able to put his brother's memory to rest and maybe move on. This creates a character who is bent on revenge. He is obsessive about revenge, and there is nothing else that can satisfy him like the idea of making this man pay for what he did. And when you really think about that idea, it comes off kind of hollow. It's like, okay, Revenge is not really a thing that in reality is going to make you happy. Like, it might be satisfying in the moment, but what comes after? Like, how do you actually live well? I don't think revenge is going to get you there. So this is his lie. Revenge will make me happy. His flaw that results from this is because he's so obsessive about revenge, he will put revenge or the steps to get there, which really means money, getting money, above the well being of other people, above what is wise, and above especially morality. I think this is important, right? It's not just that he's going against the rules, he's doing the wrong things in order to get the revenge because he's so bent on it, he doesn't care. This ends up hurting himself and the people around him. So basically, this influences his decision making. Moving on to his want. I think, in a word, his want is revenge. But if we look deeper and underneath that, I think he wants closure. Because what he really wants at the end is for this man to remember what he did to him and to get acknowledgement of his pain. Yes, he wants revenge, but I think really he wants closure for this situation and for the man who did it to understand what he cost him. And in order to get this, his want, his emotional want, he needs to have a tangible goal. We see very clearly that his tangible goal of amassing a crew in order to achieve a heist to get a very large sum of money is going to allow him to get the influence he needs to take down the person who essentially killed his brother. His need slash lesson is interesting. I think this is the main thing that can be debated. So it's essentially what's the opposite of his lie, right? That like revenge is going to make him happy. I think what his actual need is to realize that revenge is not going to be the thing that's going to satisfy him, but it's actually caring about and letting in other people. It's essentially vulnerability and human connection, which I think is a great theme. And his B story character, if we're talking about Save the Cat, which is not on here, but it's basically the person who teaches him the lesson, right? That's a Nej. And she's always like, I can't be with you because you're always going to be stone cold. I can't be with you unless you actually open up and are vulnerable with me. And so that's kind of his push to say, okay, maybe there's something more that I need than just revenge. Maybe I actually need to change as a person. That's Kaz Brekker. That is his character profile. That is my character profile in action to create a complex character. And this is coming from really reliable sources. This isn't just me saying these things. This is what I would suggest if you want to actually create a character who is going to be an enduring character, who you're going to be able to figure out exactly what they want and what makes them tick, and to create a really meaningful story around them and around their character arc and transformation. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like down below and also subscribe to see more writing craft tips and tricks from me. Happy writing, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.